everyone, and welcome to the first episode of The Unfamiliar Shift. This week, we're focusing on co-working. This is a BLLA and StayBoutique production. I think a lot of you know who we are, but I actually have something exciting to share this morning. We're coming out with the definition of boutique to start this episode. So what is the definition? Finally, we have an answer. It's a business that offers a curated service, product, or experience that is one of a kind. Typically, it has a defined and differentiating point of view and provides a memorable impression due to its distinct approach. So there's different ways to approach this: overnight experiences, hotel, or co-working. Now, what's a lifestyle? What's the definition of lifestyle? It's the distinguishing way one lives, including the style, attitudes, and possessions of an individual, group, or culture. So then, what's the boutique lifestyle? It is someone who enjoys a boutique lifestyle and wants a specialized, curated service, product, or experience that reflects their modern values and helps support their lifestyle ideals. This can be a business with a cultural impact or category innovation, providing a unique sensorial experience or something that simply makes people's lives better. From environments to new-to-world products and services, the only bounds boutique knows are those of the imagination. And the reason I wanted to give that definition is that's because that's all we're about. And BLLA, the Boutique Lifestyle Leaders Association, we're the official association for the world's boutique lifestyle leaders. We're the original hub supporting boutique and independent hotels and businesses since 2009. And we value leadership, advocacy, and education. Now, BLLA has a sister brand. It's called StayBoutique. StayBoutique is my baby. And we're all about being content curators. Live the best in boutique with our guides, trends, and happenings. We're all about collaboration connectors, providing the community opportunities to be discovered. And hey, we're connoisseurs of cool, a hub for the daring pioneers and businesses of the boutique community. You'll see the cherry. You're going to see that a lot in our industry. The cherry is going to represent someone or a business who is authentically boutique, because our movement has grown, but now we're really big on creating authenticity and transparency throughout all of this. Quickly, how you can support us: subscribe to our YouTube channel, to our newsletters, give us some social love, hit that follow button, maybe put our emails into your primary inbox just to make sure that you're getting them, info@blla.org and news@boutiqueweekly.com. And lastly, show that you stand with boutique. Use the hashtag boutique strong, and hashtag save boutique hotels. We're all about community, and I just wanted to say something really quickly here. The boutique sector is, has, and always will be a family. Together, we have reinvented what a hotel is, and even through a crisis, we will continue our innovations. And that's really why we started this new series called The Unfamiliar Shift. It's to showcase great examples of adaptation to what we call the new paradigm in the boutique community. And so you can see some images here of some dinner parties we host in our conferences, which I know a lot of you who are attending this webinar also know all about our conferences. And with that, we are so excited about today's guest stars. They are true pioneers in their sector. First is Josh Wyatt, the CEO of Neuhaus. Then we have Debbie Wosskow, the co-founder of Albright, and our awesome host, Amy Jakubowski, the founder of AEJ Collective. Amy, off to you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. As Ariel noted, the Unfamiliar Shift is really focused on adapting to the new realms of our reality. As they've quickly noted, it's the new paradigm. And what we really wanted to do, and it was very easy to say yes to this, is create thoughtful dialogues that inspire insights to our various members and audience within the boutique community, because we would like to create a sense of hope and forward thinking and innovation, because out of every bad situation, something amazing happens. That, and I'm such a nosy Parker, and I'm so excited I get to speak to these amazing folks. Debbie and Josh are with us, and I'm very excited. They're two amazing entrepreneurs, and I would love for each one of them to kind of start the conversation off with the differential. Debbie, who is co-founder of Albright, is a social club, and Josh, who is our CEO of Newhouse, is a co-working space. And there are a lot of similarities. There's fine line differences that blur together, but I think it would be great if you could start the conversation with each one of your organizations. Debbie, can we start with you?
Of course, yes. I might just take one step back and just give very quickly the potted history of Albright, because I think that sets the scene a little bit in terms of what we think physical space can stand for. So Albright is a business that's just over 2 years old. My background is that I'm a serial tech entrepreneur based in London. My co-founder, Anna Jones, was the CEO of Hearst, the publishing business. And our story is one of serendipity. We were set up, if you like, at a party by a mutual friend just over 3 years ago who said, you two should be friends. And off the back of that, we spent a long time talking about life, the universe, and everything. We live in a similar part of town. Our children are similar ages, but primarily we were lone female CEOs in industries that are not known for having female CEOs. And in our life as female leaders, we were so used to being the only women at the table that we sort of stopped noticing. And Albright was born from those conversations and from the way in which your life can change when you meet an awesome woman, as mine did when I met Anna. And on the back of a cocktail menu in another social club, actually one of the Soho houses in London, we scribbled Project Albright after the famous Madeline quote that there's a special place in hell for women who don't help other women. Because what we wanted to do was to build a business, yes, a community, most definitely, something that could combine purpose with profit to create a monster global sisterhood of kick-ass women who could change the world. So it was a pretty highfalutin objective, and that is what we've tried to execute on over the last couple of years. And there are two parts to our business. The first are physical spaces, and the way that we have imagined them is to try and think through ourselves as the natural consumers of what Albright can offer. And in my life as an entrepreneur, I'm quite a simple entrepreneur, and that I've only ever built businesses where I can see myself as the consumer. So we wanted a space that could take a woman, as we are female-only members, but enlightened men very welcome in our buildings, from the beginning of her day to the end of her busy day. And that can also, given that the objective is smart-minded, ambitious women together in a room who would not otherwise have met, a bit like Anna and I, who would not have met through our work lives, because she was an executive with a corner office and an expense account, and I was a sort of grubby entrepreneur who was used to building up businesses. And so our take on it and our spaces, we have 2 in London, 1 in Los Angeles, and we're soon to open in the Meatpacking District in New York, is that women want more than just a co-work. And our audience is a real mix of executives, entrepreneurs, consultants, freelancers, women pivoting after they've had kids. And what they want is much more than just a workspace. So in our clubs, there's a food and beverage offer. And women also want to drink great cocktails and eat great food. What women want to eat is a whole separate conversation, which I've become very expert on, because it's not always what they say they want to eat. They want spaces to meet one another. They want to attend events that uplift, connect, inspire, upskill, that happen in our buildings 2, 3, 4 times a day, every day. They want some sort of fitness, wellness, self-care offer, whether that's to do with mental health, whether that's to do with blow dries, whether that's to do with, as we have in our Mayfair Club, the only strength training only studio for women in the UK, because we believe that strong women can change the world. It's also really important that we do have a space where women can work, but we very much see from a business model perspective that we are a membership-driven organization. If you look at our different revenue streams, it's membership alongside F&B, alongside private hire, and alongside commercial partnerships, because we've captured this audience of awesome women that are hard to reach. And so our partnerships around things like our Female Founders Pitch Day, which we run in all of our buildings and virtually across the world, is sponsored by HSBC. We have a relationship with Tiffany and Tory Burch, and in a way, it's the combination of my business partner's background in magazines and publishing as a publishing CEO, and my own in running digital subscription models that's combined in terms of thinking about the business. But in terms of thinking about the experience, it's for smart-minded, ambitious women to go through their days. And the life of the buildings change depending on the time of day. They change at the weekends, where we have the Small Bright, which is our childcare offering, because so many of our members, like ours, have young children. And so we think it's more than just a workspace, because our audience is not just looking for workspace, they're looking actually for meaning and connection. When you walk into our clubs, in neon, in all of the hallways, it says Sisterhood Works, because we think it does, and that's what our buildings exemplify. And then alongside the physical spaces, which I'm sure is what we're going to talk about in a bit, we've always thought of the business as having a very strong digital offering. How can you bring the experience of being in a physical space to women who don't happen to live in London or New York or Los Angeles or wherever we're going next? What does that sense of community mean? How can we bring programming to our digital community? How can we bring upskilling, which is the Albright Academy, which I can talk more about in a bit. We published a magazine, we published something called Albright Edit, and we wrote a book, which is Believe, Build, Become, which Penguin published at the beginning of this year, which is our guide to how to do it. So in a way, we think of ourselves really as a content business. It's just that the content is either articulated physically, or as it is at the moment from my living room, digitally.
Thank you so much. Josh, tell us a little bit about Neuhaus and the co-working space and the meanings behind that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you sort of opened with the word co-working, because we actually don't use that word in anywhere relating to what we do and sort of how we believe our business is positioned. I think, the word co-working to me is a very one-dimensional word that really just describes an office building or a place where people are working together. Neuhaus was founded upon the belief that there's a much deeper sense of community when you base it around a set of values and a true creative system. So, we were founded about 7-8 years ago, really the first in the industry to wrap together these various concepts of design, community, programming, digital, and a number of other boutique hospitality concepts, that were programmed into this private members workspace, into an element of a social club. And to Debbie's point, as well, really focused on programming. So similar to Albright, we run probably, I'd say, it depends on the week, but, any given day, probably, anywhere from 1 to 2 programming events per day. And, during big festivals and creative moments, Freeze LA is a good example. I think we had 21 programming events in 5 days. So this concept of people coming together to work, to share ideas, to really have this system of provocative, creative ideas, all wrapped within a high performance work environment. That's what Neuhaus is. And I think the future of work, it's obviously we're in an extraordinary time right now, but the future of work and the future of ideas is definitely changing. And the crisis that we're facing right now is going to fast forward those changes, not by a year, but I think by a decade. So, we've all looked, all hospitality and workspace and members club entrepreneurs have been talking about a digital revolution for years now. I think it's going to happen in 8 weeks. The move online, the move of content online, the move of meetings online, all of these moments are going to go online. They're going to be cataloged for the rest of eternity. And then the question then becomes, in this space, the space of working, the space of social clubs, space of hotels, what does that look like as human beings socialize and work in a different environment? And that's, thankfully, I think by pure luck, I think Noy House is very well set up for that, based on how we've structured our workspaces, our public spaces, how we've designed with a very wide open sense of feel and high touch and space and the ability to plug in and plug out. And that's where I think the future of work and socialization is going to be. To Debbie's point, you don't have to be in London, New York, LA, or pick any other big city around the world to now access great content, right? Obviously, there's always been content providers, whether it was previously more traditional magazines, and obviously that's evolved to TEDx and 100 different competitors. It's now going to be about how do you actually fuse those content moments into the work environment so you can get work done. You can actually go take a great idea that's written on a napkin or that you've seen in a virtual presentation. Then how do you collaborate physically to actually drive forward those ideas? So those are some interesting things that we're looking at right now. And again, I think by probably a little bit of skill, a little bit of luck, and having the opportunity to design these spaces, I think we're moving into this new world with a sense of confidence and optimism.
That's fantastic. That actually leads to one of my questions, and I have them, and I'm not putting them in any order because I'm waiting to see what you feed me to go with that. But a lot of these clubs, social gatherings, a lot of the success comes from the fact that people come together, they come from different backgrounds, they're in this open environment, and that there's a buzz and a sense of creativity. And some of the numbers that I've stumbled upon is, people that have joined clubs or social clubs or these situations, 82% of the people have expanded their professional networks and social networks. 83% feel less lonely. And overall, 89% are happier about being part of a community. Both Albright and Newhouse are very much community-based, and you're rooted in that, and you have a significant amount of programming. But how is that? Is it going to always be digital? How are you going to bring back the people to come together? Because I don't think that you really lose that sense. Do you see this fear dissipating? What do you see the evolution happening as we start to kind of come out of this pandemic and isolation that we've been in?
It's a great question. And I think that the way that we think about it is, in a sense, a bit like a retailer, that our physical spaces are our flagships. Mm-hmm. And you're completely right that in many senses, that's where the magic happens. We're a new business. Our first club opened just over 2 years ago. Our Los Angeles club's only been open for a few months. And a lot of what gives you energy as an entrepreneur is seeing this idea or series of ideas that you've had come to life. And the thing that does it for us is exactly that. It's women making connections with other women that they wouldn't otherwise have met. It's women gaining in confidence as well as in cocktails. It's women upskilling as well as, it's in the mix. Mm-hmm. The challenge for us, frankly, and I'm sure it's been the challenge for Josh and for all of us, is that we launched our digital business at the same time as launching our physical first club on Rathbone Place in London. But those buildings, that boutique tailored experience, that combining of design with execution, it's very heavy lifting, right? As a founder, it sucks the life out of you. It's very, very team heavy. I found it personally a massive challenge in terms of how you build culture and brand and values in a way that I know how to do that. I've done it 3 times before, but I've done it with online businesses. And I think doing it with a much broader range of people doing different things, everyone from the barista through to the digital marketing person, through to the group head of operations, through to the in-house designer, has got to be with you on the bus, as we say in the UK, is really hard. And also, we are living our values of employing really 90% women, which again is a different feel. It's certainly very different from running a tech business. When you collide that with a global pandemic, and everything that all of us will have gone through, and Josh will have gone through exactly the same. All of our buildings shut, many of our team furloughed or made redundant. It has been, as a founder and I've been through 2000, 2007, and all of us have been around, long enough to have recognized other situations that have felt very out of control. But this is like nothing else. So trying to get through that, to reaffirm your values when you think about digital, to do it with integrity. And I think that is a big challenge for many of us, where basically everybody in this industry that's dealing with physical space that sits alongside programming and community has had to think about how they bring that experience online. And then they're also having to think in the medium to longer term about what that future looks like. So there's some very real questions that none of us can answer, which is, when are we reopening? Are we going to have to social distance within our clubs? What does it look like? Will people be out there? And so all of us will be scenario planning every single different version of that. But there's also this big question of, if you look at what's happened with Albright in the last month, to mark our homework, I think we've been very, very quick at moving all of the programming that we would have done online, at building that out further, at looking at our paid product, because we do have a paid digital product which has been relaunched, at recutting the academy in lots of different ways to deal with resilience and people under pressure, and a lot of the real life situations that our members and digital members will face, which is losing their jobs, wanting to pivot in their careers, wanting to start a new business, being worried about money. So it's been the biggest challenge of my career by a long way. The worst day ever in my career, the day of having to furlough 90% of our workforce. Nobody comes out of that unscathed. It was a very emotional day. But on the other hand, seizing the opportunity, trying to make lemonade from the lemons, which I must have said about 20,000 times in the last month, as we all have, but genuinely believing it, but trying to retain your values and, frankly, to motivate and transform a team at pace, in a different way of thinking, in a boutique way of thinking, where the execution and authenticity of that content is paramount, but with one eye on, well, what does it look like when we've got all our buildings open, when we're opening New York and we're doing this? And, we have investors, just as Josh does, and Josh was mentioning before that he knows one of my investors very well. In a way, we're all shifting, I think, our story and our sense of not only where the experience is, but where the value lies. And that's a positive thing, but it's a very challenging thing.
Yeah. Josh, how are you approaching this? How are you looking at this?
Yeah, I mean, I think the main sort of thrust of the question that we're all asking is, what does life look like when we all sort of walk out of our houses and, rub our eyes a little bit and open up our eyes to the new world? I do think, actually, I'm extremely optimistic about the future of social environments, social clubs, work clubs, because I think what will happen is you'll see that people will certainly work from home more often. There definitely will be more digital content, as I mentioned earlier. The acceleration of that digital moment is going to happen in 8 weeks versus 8 years. But I think it would give more time to actually unplug and plug back into an IRL experience. So we see our membership profile shifting. In fact, I launched this virtual background that I have is Bradbury in downtown LA. We just opened February 1st. And our original underwrite was that we would have something like, 80% of our members would be fixed based studio members, companies, et cetera. And around the opening of Bradbury and in partnering with the Freeze Art Fair in LA, we launched Neuhaus Salon, which was meant to be a social membership, very focused on arts, culture, casual working. So 1 day a week and working on the weekends or coming to a programming event. my underwrite's totally pivoted around to say, actually, everything is going to go to salon, which is we're already getting massive amounts of corporations and small businesses saying, you know what, I actually, if I'm a big corporate, and I can't name any names, but we were just approached this week saying, look, our corporate footprint for probably one of the most creative companies in the world, we're going to downsize by 50% our LA office, and we're going to take those 500 people, we're going to make them work from home, but they need a place one day a week to hang out that's super elevated, extremely design driven, and has heat and buzz in it. And they're going to bump into other CEOs or other creative entrepreneurs or artists or musicians. So we're about to sign that deal where we're probably going to quadruple our membership count for that same amount of effort and work. So the way that I see it is people are always going to want to socialize. It's just how they socialize and the pace. The way that I see it is even in my own life with my family, we're now making, I think people have woken up a little bit. I actually, for the first time in years, I sat down with my wife. I'm like, hey, let's open up our virtual checkbook. Let's go through all the money we spend. And we looked at it, we were gobsmacked. We're like, this is crazy. We have all this money we're spending. You know what? Let's spend a little bit less money, but when we spend it, it's going to be on really special experiences. The same thing can be said for social clubs, for work environments. People can say, you know what, I'm not going to sign that big office lease anymore, or I'm not going to have let's take Neuhaus. Maybe I had a 24-person team before and I had a huge studio. You know what, I'll take a 4-person team or studio, but then that frees up my resources to have 20 more employees come once a week. So I do think it doesn't matter what the pandemic is, whether it's 1918 or 400 years ago or whatever it is with the play, people are always going to want to and need to spend time together. We're a very social species, but I think that will change. And I think it's going to be much more quality over quantity. I do think, and I think it's sad to say, there's going to be a lot of business failures of either restaurants, bars, social clubs that frankly probably were on the edge to begin with and maybe didn't need to be around. So I think you'll see less supply. I think you'll see more focal or localized demand. And within that construct, I think we will actually do quite well.
Yeah, I was looking at the trajectory in general and the projections for 2022 for these social club and shared working spaces was projected to like triple by 2022 from where it is today. Do you see that trajectory as still being that? I mean, given what you just said, Josh, with the fact that people are probably going to rethink their leases, there's probably a lot of people that were furloughed. And I was even talking to somebody who actually was an anti-work from home, who's now a turned person. So you're going to see a whole group of people that
I'll answer this briefly. I'll turn it over to Debbie. I think that the demand will continue to grow, but again, it will shift a little bit. I think you will see more people working from home, but they're going to have that one day a week or whatever, 2 days a week, especially if you have kids. I have 3 young children under the age of 5. I love seeing them. This month has actually been quite magical for me with my children. But, like once a week I hit the wall and my wife and I, like, we need space. And when I'm thinking big thoughts, big creative thoughts, I need to get away and I can't go to a Starbucks on the corner. So I do think that there's this need for a really important, quiet, but yet, interesting space with interesting people and great interior design. So I think that will increase demand-wise. I think that supply-wise, it will decrease. I just think the real estate world is upside down. This will be massive dislocation. I think that you'll see in the space right now, I could probably count 20 different concepts that have been announced in the last 2 years in this particular space that Albright and Neuhaus are in. I think maybe 5 will survive. I'm talking about global brands that have global ambitions. Every city has its own boutique or individual entrepreneur, but without naming names, you take Albright, you take Neuhaus, I could name probably 18 other concepts that are somewhat touch this area. And I think maybe 5 will be left 2 years from now. And that's a good thing, by the way. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think there'll be consolidation. I think you'll see people partnering up together. And that will bring great innovation. The partnerships that will happen, maybe even Albright and Neuhaus will partner, who knows? But there's partnerships that will happen that is going to be born out of necessity because there's going to be scarce resources, scarce capital, And that is a good thing. That is not a bad thing. Some of the greatest inventions in all time, and even in recent times, let's take, the dot-com crash of 99, 2000, the biggest, most important companies today that are now killing it, were basically, maybe they weren't founded in 2000, they were founded in 1997, but they hit the rocket fuel after that moment. And I think the same thing's going to happen.
Yeah. Debbie, do you have an additional thought on that? I mean, that's interesting. That was one of the questions earlier. Where do you see some of the collaborations and sort of the migrating together of these different venues?
Look, I think that the opportunities for collaboration are huge. What will the constraints be to growth? Capital, primarily. I think it would be wrong for anyone to think that our capital raising plans that were in place in December 2019 are still our capital raising plans. I think it's just a reality that it will be slower to raise capital, harder to raise capital, that people will look very carefully at valuations. And then there's been tons written on that in the last few weeks about how a steady state valuation is the new 3 up and not, anyway, I don't need to sort of opine on whether the venture capital industry. We were in a very lucky position that we were just closing a round, and it was really nerve-wracking, if I'm honest, to think, oh my God, is this now going to fall apart? And thankfully it didn't, and it closed about 2 weeks ago. So why will there be consolidation? I think it will be driven in two different ways. The first is, as ever, who is your consumer and what do they want? Where do they want to be? And I firmly agree with Josh that I actually think what will happen is that people will be able to, can't wait to get out of their bloody houses, right? So I think this sense in which we're all sitting in our sofas forever and ever is just wrong. It's just not how people are. God willing, if we're out of here by the summer, I think it will be the biggest summer anyone's ever seen, social distancing or not social distancing. So there's just that. That's just how human beings are. But I think what they will expect is more than ever, frankly. I mean, we have a very demanding customer base. I speak as one of our natural customers. If you've got thousands of smart-minded, ambitious women to get, you better deliver. I think that the ask will be greater. I think that the ask during this time has been hugely motivating for us, which is to keep our community together and to keep them happy. How might collaboration work? We are all in some shape or form in the business of acquiring spaces, generally leasehold spaces, and making them look beautiful and functional and having them located in aspirational parts of town and aspirational parts of the world. That is really expensive. So if you've got a situation where capital is more constrained, will people think differently? Yeah. Might you have, Albright at Neuhaus in different, why not? I think that for us, the way that I think about it, and where Albright started and all of my businesses, you just got to be very, very clear on who your audience is. And you absolutely have to, beginning and end of the day, prioritize what do they want, what do they need. Of course that changes, and that's what drives our product development, has driven our product development digitally, but particularly in the last month. But because of that, I think what we bring to the table is a brand that is absolutely aligned with smart-minded, ambitious women who are hard to access. So why couldn't that be delivered in different ways in different places? Hell yeah. How could it be delivered differently digitally? Absolutely. What does the Albright look like in Hong Kong or in Dubai or in Shanghai or in Sydney, where I was just before Christmas? Do I think that we will do standalone, wholly owned buildings in those cities ourselves? I don't know. Is there a quicker way to market? We're always open to that. We always say we divide and conquer, we combine, and we grow and thrive. And I think now more than ever, we have had some really interesting conversations in the last few weeks that I don't think would have happened prior to this. But if you try and distill why, it's because people are thinking and having to think differently about access to capital. That's a good thing.
Absolutely. You know, one of the questions that came up kind of bridges on something we were talking about. Both of your brands are very much rooted in design and bringing people together, and how design really evokes all of that. You know, and in some of these initial spaces, they were actually repurposing old manufacturing plants when co-working first kind of hit the scene. And I'm using that term because that's kind of how it was defined when I researched it. I heard you earlier, Josh. But what was interesting is they took old manufacturing plants to create collaborative spaces. And everybody's now evolved based on their ethos and their brand to create these collaborative spaces. Where do you see the spaces migrating? Josh, your buildings are in some amazing, you know, you have the CBS property, the old property. Now you're in Bradbury. You're in the heart of West Hollywood as well. Is there a potential to maybe bring these types of spaces into hotel markets, into the hotel scene, as part of that collaborative?
Yeah, I think you know, we've been approached by several, you know, fairly iconic brands to either partner, license, you know, to be acquired. I think that's the future. You know, I personally have been working with a couple thought leaders in the space, in the hotel space, to look at how people are going to use hotel spaces differently. So, you know, the traditional big box, you know, it's called upper upscale hotel that has this programmatic feature. I mean, it's literally, it's a formula, right? And 90% of big box upper upscale hotels are designed the same way. That will change. It has been changing. Again, this crisis we're in is just accelerating change, which is a great thing. So, you know, in the future, if you look at how people are going to use space, in my mind, number one, they're going to want to travel less. So traveling less, meaning they're not going to want to get on a subway or a tube all the time, or go from a meeting here to a meeting there, to sleeping in this hotel there, to working out there. It's definitely going to be a little bit more compact. So to Debbie's earlier point about having a number of different services within your offer, the same thing can be extrapolated out for boutique hotels or you know, upper upscale hotels. So I do think you'll see the sense of accessible wellness, accessible workspace, accessible programming coming in, versus the way it used to be or is now, where you may have a lifestyle hotel that, you know, has only one point of view on one really amazing thing, like an amazing nightclub or an amazing restaurant. But you go to the spa, and the spa, it doesn't really work, right? Or the gym isn't really that good, or there's no really good place to work. Or maybe it's the opposite. The spa is totally amazing, but there's no great place to actually hang out and have a cocktail with friends after work. So I think it's finding the balance. And I think that there will be, again, I think there's going to be massive consolidation and movement in the space. And it wouldn't shock me if a hotel company either starts and or buys one of these members clubs, social clubs, working clubs, co-working companies. You know, it won't shock me if I pick up the Wall Street Journal 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and see that one of these companies has been, or many companies have been swallowed up by or partnered with hotel companies. Or another interesting angle, I think, is you'll see for-profit, private, art-based institutions like museums, art fairs, live entertainment venues partner up with social clubs as well. I think it's going to be a marriage of necessity. And again, I think you'll see this type of quote unquote consolidation happen quite frequently, actually.
Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. Debbie, do you have any additional thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a hugely interesting area for us to explore. Obviously, I have some form in terms of engaging with large hotel groups, larger than the format of this conversation, because my last business, Love Home Swap, I sold to Wyndham Worldwide, the hotel group, and that was, just to spend 30 seconds explaining it because I think it's relevant. It was a home exchange for holidays platform, and they acquired it because they were looking to reinvent RCI, their timeshare brand that they'd had for years and years and years. So I think that sense in which new thinking, new ways of using space, and new ways of thinking about digital community is appealing to hoteliers is a very, very interesting conversation. And to come back and extend my point on different access to capital, more limited access to capital, driving important conversations around partnership. It's also a different version of that, which is that we all need space. Actually, we need a lot less space than a hotel. And so it's a really interesting way of thinking about our objectives around bringing together smart-minded, ambitious women in beautiful prime locations around the world, where often hotels and boutique hotels are situated. And they do often, as a side point, struggle around being female friendly, appealing to female travelers, appealing to women who work. Well, they are our women and they're aligned with the Albright brand. I think that already some really innovative boutique hotels are looking at this. They're looking at workspace and community more broadly, like Ennismore, who we know well, they're Brits, friends of ours. I think that's really interesting to look at what they're doing with thinking about workspace and community. And obviously from the other angle, Soho House have gone into that in a slightly different way. But I am really interested in exploring how we can bring that Albright experience through partnership in one way or another to beautiful spaces where people stay. Because if you're part of that Albright community where you're going from the beginning of your day to the end of your day within a space, then stay is an extension of that, a very natural one.
Right now, neither one of your brands plays in the hotel space. You don't necessarily, it's not like Soho House has some and some of these others.
Yeah.
Is that something that you even ever considered prior to the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, sorry.
Go on. No, go on, Josh.
Yeah, I think, the original founders of Noy House and one of the original backers, which owns the Lingham Hotel Group, certainly I think was thinking about that. Ultimately, as Debbie mentioned earlier, that just takes a lot of capital. I mean, I've built, operated, owned over 55 hotels in 13 countries. So I know how to do it. It's my background as a hotelier. It's something that always is interesting. I think, again, it's so capital intensive. I mean, let's take Ennismore as a good example. Sharon's a very close friend of mine. Sharon's been in this game for 13 years and has spent, well over $1 billion of capital to build up what is an incredible company. But it takes well over a decade. I mean, when I built Generator, it took me 9 years to build 14 sites in 10 countries, with over 250 million euros of equity capital. So, I think there's a place for it, but I think in this environment, especially with the virus situation, capital is going to be very scarce. New build situations, I think, will be non-existent for the next 3 years, at least. And so therefore, you're going to see partnerships happen where you're going to plug into, you'll take Hotel X and you'll take a floor and you'll put an Albright in, or you'll put a Noy House satellite in. That's what's going to happen. I can't see it the other way around, where Noy House goes out and raises $1 billion of PropCo capital, and goes on, and I just don't see it. And Soho House, every company is built within its own time. Soho House has been around for going on 30 years now, and it's very similar to Orient Express hotels, where the founding of that company was post World War II, when real estate was extremely cheap. And there was no competition, and you're buying assets for pennies on the dollar. That Nick Jones did that 20, 30 years ago. And as he's expanded, it's become very, very difficult and extremely capital intensive with a lot of debt. That's just a position that I think, a challenging position to be in, actually, in this point in time.
Speaking of, you're talking about blending the two plans together, the idea of Albright or a new house sitting in within a hotel. Without naming brands, because we're in the boutique space right now, what would be an ideal hotel that you would insert each one of your brands in? What does that look like in sort of a vision?
Well, just to try and make that real for a second, and probably the better place to start is, what is an Albright? So an Albright is 15 to 20,000 square foot worth of space. It's prime space that's female friendly. It does very well close to retail for sort of obvious reasons, in terms of where women feel comfortable. And it needs to be close to where women work, but also very accessible from a transport perspective. So if you think about where we are, we're on Melrose Place in West Hollywood, we're on West 15th Street by 9th Street in the Meatpacking District, we're in Mayfair. So in a way, rather than sort of name names, the way that I think about it and some of the conversations that we're engaged with at the moment is that's what Albright is. Mm-hmm. Could it be 10,000 square foot? Probably, but it would need to sit within an environment where some of those other features that we offer around wellness, for example, might not be in our building, but might be adjacent. So if you look at our West Hollywood space, we don't have a fitness offering in there because it honestly felt like that was the last thing that was needed in West Hollywood, given that there are about 20 of them at the end of the street. But we do have relationships that enable us to take that Albright woman from the beginning of her day to the end of her day. So where would it sit comfortably? It would sit in a hotel or within a chain of boutique hotels where that was where they were located. And that was the amount of space that they had available for something that really is a content offering. You know, that's the way that I would see it within a hotel environment where we could curate all of our Albright events and programming, where we could offer a place for the sisterhood to coalesce, where we could bring in women from different walks of life, where it could be beautiful, you know, from a design aesthetic. Mm-hmm. That has been very interesting for us, as I'm sure it has been for Josh, to think about what are you rolling out. You know, our style is very glamorous and feminine without being girly. We have an absolute ban on millennial pink in our buildings, but we, which isn't about being rude to other people operating in our adjacent space, but that's our take on it. But also the Albright Rathbone Place, which was our first building, which is you know, it's really small. It's 4,000 square foot. It was our first experimental space. It's a terribly English townhouse. Is not going to work in a loft in the Meatpacking District. So I think, again, to your question on where might it fit, just we are very open to thinking about what does an Albright look and feel like. To give the final example, one of the things that we have done to test this rollout strategy and to look at partnerships, and also as a platform to build up our digital and content business globally, is we do Albright residencies. And that's where we program 2 weeks of an Albright, you know, where we do our Female Founders Pitch Day and the Albright Academy Live, lots of our content stuff. And I did that in the Upper House in Hong Kong. God, it seems like a lifetime ago now, but at the end of November. And that was a very natural fit for us. We did a sort of takeover of the top floor of the Upper House for a couple of weeks, and that worked really well. Would that work well to have a permanent Albright in it? You know, sure. You know, would be a really interesting conversation to have. So I think it's just now for us all about where is our community? What do they want? When we're all allowed out of our houses, how will they convene? And how do we do that in a really capital effective way whilst building out our brand? And I think thinking about partnerships as a way of doing that is really interesting.
Yeah. Josh, you're in some really signature buildings. Would you drive the look? Where would you live? In it's not really about a brand, but the space. Would Neuhaus drive the look of that collaboration, or would you just sit nicely into something that existed already?
Well,
I
would love to be in Upper House. Wouldn't we all? I want to live there. That's definitely my favorite hotel. It is the best in Asia. It's fantastic. So you know, it's interesting. You know, I think similar to Debbie's comments. You know, looking at the sort of the broad underwrite of the right place to be, I think is important. It's you know, look, Neuhaus at the end of the day is a boutique brand. So we don't have ambition. In fact, when I came in as CEO, probably about 18 months ago, one of the big focal points that I made a point of
really communicating is, forget about, 20 Neue houses in 20 countries by 2022 or something. Let's just do like 2 new ones. Let's focus on beautiful buildings that we love, and really focus on trying to open up a couple really amazing new sites, one in Bradbury, which is on my virtual background, and a couple new ones that we announced. And other than that, like, we're pretty happy with that. I don't think that going around and doing too many of these really makes sense. We're trying to focus on what we do best. We're trying to, slowly but surely build up all the DNA that we have and really getting it ready to go. And
how big are they, Josh?
So we're typically, anywhere from 50 to 100,000 feet. Hollywood is about 95,000, and New York is about 70,000, and Bradbury is about 30. And we might go up or down. We're just sort of intrigued by really interesting buildings. So it usually is building specific, and it's hard to put it into a spreadsheet, but you sort of know when you see it. Again, it's very, using Sharon as an example, he's gone into these, for the most part, incredible buildings, and, knowing how he thinks, it's just, you sort of fall in love with the building, and you want to try to figure out a way to bring it to life. And so that to me is what sort of excites me and, makes me motivated.
Fantastic. You guys are, let's just see if there's any questions here. Some of them have been overlapping. There's quite a few questions. How are you adapting to accommodating all these like grandiose new hygiene standards? That seems to have come up. That seems to be a hot topic with our questions here. Is that going to be an issue going forward? I mean, not necessarily getting that myopic, but do you see that as an issue? Somebody brought up in one of our previous webinars, the idea of taking temperatures as people walk in the door.
Sure.
Do you see that happening? How do you adapt that into?
Yeah, I'm reading some of the questions that are being sent, and I think there's, that seems to be, sort of,
You're seeing
there's 2 or 3 that are, yeah. So look, I think it would be, I think any COO, CEO would be lying if they said, hey, we know exactly what we're going to do when we reopen. I think if anyone tells you that, they're 100% lying to you. What I will tell you is that we obviously are trying to look at everything that's going on. We're trying to learn. We're trying to see, A, what is the law? So that's easy. You can follow that. But then B, what is the service ethos of how people are going to interact? So it's a very fine dance. Like, it's literally seeing, okay, so when someone walks in the door, what then happens, right? Do you move the front desk? Is there a sign that says they have to stop? Is there a temperature check? Is there whatever? All that we're thinking about. We don't know any of the answers yet. We're obviously seeing how other countries and societies are dealing with this. There's that question. And the next question is, what is the physical refurbishment, whether it's actual physical refurbishment or OS&E, meaning the physical little things that you touch. So, for example, one idea that we've been playing around with is, do you reconstruct all of the glassware and dishware to use copper instead? So instead of a glass that you get a drink in, is it now a copper mug? Because they're saying that copper kills the virus better than any other alloy. So there's those technical design questions that are being debated, not only within Neuhaus, but other hoteliers that I've spoken to. So I think there's going to be a combination of physical hard CapEx over the next 6 months as people rush to figure it out. There's, they call it 33% that, 33% service ops, and 33% of the little touch points to make sure that you have the right daily things that are put into the property to really focus on.
I didn't know about that copper. Now you're gonna have the Moscow mules going up in sales.
Yeah,
You said that. I think it is sort of a new chapter. I'm sure you're probably feeling the same thing, having to address that, Debbie. I don't know what your take on that is.
I mean, all of that stuff, but also I think, just to come back to revenue and performance for a second, I think, as well as having to adjust all of our revenue forecasts with closed buildings and to think about how we keep our existing members happy, I think that whilst none of us can predict the future, it seems likely on some level that we will, when we do reopen, we will have to operate at a reduced capacity because of some sense of social distancing having to happen within the building. So there are pragmatic things to think about, like if it's 2 meters between chair, how do we do it? But also, this has been the year of every revenue forecast that anyone has had being thrown up in the air. And one of the other things that we have to think about is I don't think it's as simple as we're back, the doors are open, it's going to be staged in some shape or form, and that has an impact to the life of a building, the use of a building. We've also got a building site in New York, and so there are some big questions about how we manage that building project. There are some international differences, I think, on perhaps perception on what is the right thing to do, because there's still a lot of building work going on in New York, and there's less building work going on in the UK, and we don't feel it's ethically right to be operating a full building site in New York right now. So there's a lot to think about, and that sense of the right thing, treating people with dignity and respect, and how your buildings have to react to that, whether they're the embryonic buildings or whether they're the operating buildings, will take up a lot of our thinking time.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Okay. I want to, we talk about this, we're kind of getting close to our hour, and I think we've answered, for the most part, most of the questions have kind of bled into, there's various messages coming up. But one of the things that I really wanted to keep on is positive.
Sorry, there's one message that I want to respond to, which I think is very interesting.
Oh, please. Go
so
ahead.
There's one message that says, why is Noy House not actively focusing on their current membership? Open communications. I think that's really important that we address that. Okay. So I saw very, very open. We were actually the first membership group to freeze all membership dues, and we were the first group to close. So March 16th, before any of the governments said, hey, you have to social distance, we actually closed Noy House. We immediately notified all members that April dues are frozen, and we're also sending out, actually interesting about this question, we're sending out a communique today that we're freezing May dues as well to help our small businesses. And the second part of this question is, why is Noy House not communicating like Soho House is? There's a big difference. We are a creative platform that's really focused, and similar to Debbie, focused on creative and entrepreneurial success, and really focused on high performance creative moments and ideas. What we are not is a company that's going to post pictures of cocktails. And so we've really I purposely stopped any social media with respect to saying, hey, it's about what book are you reading? What's your cocktail? I just felt it was not appropriate in this situation. What we have done instead is really focused on providing support for our staff, providing support for our members in terms of waiving fees, paying for healthcare for our employees, working through the incredible stresses that we have to ensure that we're trying to A, employ as many people as possible through this, and B, come out, on the other end so that we have a thoughtful, very importantly, safe response to this. What we are not going to do is do, what I think, and I think this is a very big difference between a private members club that's based on sort of the creative intellectual perspective and really ensuring, positive advancement of companies and people versus a pure social club. So, there's nothing wrong. I mean, I'm love Soho House, and I think their cocktails are great and their food is great, but, we are a focused company on ensuring that people really drive success and they really are supported. And so we have doubled down on that communication, and you'll see that through our channel and through my private communications with members. So it's something that I wanted to point out because I think there's a big difference in terms of what our mission is versus a Soho House or a nightclub or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's very easy to compare certain things, and that's not always the case. And Debbie, I'm sure you're communicating with your members as well. I know that was a specific question that came in just for Josh.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose we see our role as being a bit different. So we have done, which is partly why I'm slightly running out of steam, 42 Instagram lives this week. I haven't done all of them myself, but Anna and I, my co-founder, do a weekly Ask Us Anything on Instagram Live. One or other of us has, I've done, I think, 20 this week, interviewing members, inspiring women. I'm chatting to who I know, well, Josh down from Furstenberg, and Gina Miller, who's very well known in the UK for taking the government to court over Brexit. I'm doing on Tuesday. Today I did the 2 women who wrote Slay in Your Lane. So it's a different thing. I think there's much more of an expectation, because it's a different brand, that Anna and I will be front and center in terms of content and communication with our members. They want our help and support, and they want the help and support of the Albright Sisterhood on a whole load of different topics. And we've programmed everything from fitness, wellness, meditation, to how to understand the government financial offers to help support entrepreneurs and employees in different locations, everything. And I think that is the expectation, that we will do that. So as well as launching the Albright Edit, which is our editorial platform, it's a slightly different thing. What we hope we have done is that it's all with purpose, and the purpose is to connect, to respond, to be there, to educate. That Ask Us Anything that Anna and I do really is like anything about anything. And I think that I hope that is providing a service for our members and our digital members, which is a big community. We've got 250,000 women connected with the Albright platform online, that's what they want and expect. That's a bit different from just transmit. Is much more interact and engage. And, that's been a huge shift for us. Much of the way that we did that previously was in the clubs, or it was online, but it certainly wasn't 42 Instagram lives a week. And to where you began with all of this, it won't be when we are all back in the real world either. But this is a moment in time where our audience of women are at home. They want connection. They're yearning for connection. They want support. They want to be able to speak openly. Mostly they're climbing the walls because their kids are at home, which isn't the same men want to, but and. So I think that the expectation about our role as a touch point, as a creator of content, but as 2 women who are front and center in the brand that we've created, is that's the expectation.
Fantastic. Before we close out, because you guys are both amazing entrepreneurs and you've come up with some creative ideas throughout your careers, you've launched some successful brands, and going forward, I'd like you to kind of close out in terms of, as entrepreneurs, you're very adept at pivoting, and entrepreneurs live in the unknown space, and we are living in probably the biggest unknown that any of us have ever lived in our careers. What, in your departing words, can you share with us that would inspire, provide hope? What do you tap into in terms of your creativity to help come out of this? Because out of every bad moment in time, no matter how far back you look, something amazing has come out of a bad situation. How do you stay creative and proactive in your thoughts?
Go on, Joe. You go first.
Well, I think that's a good question, but I'd answer it, I guess, more directly. In this time, I view my job as a moral duty to ensure that our employees are going to be employed, and that our members are going to come back, and they're going to have a great place to work when they come back, and to socialize and learn and share ideas. I do view this as an existential crisis for our society. I think the damage that is being done both from a physical health perspective, but also from a mental health perspective and a financial perspective is deep and profound. And I do feel that this is a once in 100-year challenge, that any leader in a company has a moral obligation to think way, way way bigger and beyond whatever their company's mission statement is. So I view it more as from a leadership perspective, what inspires and drives me, and what I view my creative, creative addition is to this dialogue, is to try to really ensure that Neuhaus is there and comes out in a position where we can really inspire and provide and support and nourish our employees, our members, our creative partners, our programming partners, our artists, our musicians. Every day I wake up, that's my mission, is to make sure that we continue to do that.
And Debbie, your parting words of inspiration or thoughts?
I think it's about having an entrepreneurial mindset, which I would encourage everybody, whether they're an entrepreneur or not, to try and foster right now. Mm-hmm. And what I mean by that is to try and frankly keep positive and remain upbeat and resilient, and recognize that we all have our moments with this. And I think I would echo everything that Josh so elegantly framed as our role as leaders. I think, we also, back to the point on mine and Anna's sort of visibility in this time, we have to see ourselves as chief cheerleaders. A lot of what we do in our interactions through Instagram and Albright Connect, which is our platform that I would recommend everyone signs up to because it's free, is try and problem solve for people where actually a lot of what they need is light and is positivity and is another opinion. And I think when we're pacing around our living room, sometimes that's hard to have because there's natural moments of creative output that come from human interaction are not as easy to find. And this, whilst being very efficient, I think is just not quite the same. And I have found that a really big challenge with trying to drive a team towards a lot of output. Doing it like this is hard. I think it's hard for leaders who are natural. We like to lead around a table and collaboratively as a team, and I think that's difficult. So having an entrepreneurial mindset, seeing the opportunity, making the most of the time. I mean, my God, the days are long. I'm so used, as I'm sure Josh is, to being on a plane. I fly long haul 3 times a month, more even. And when you take all of that away and you're just in a place, try to make the most of it. So I'm trying to do more of the things that I hate, like journaling and writing things down, thinking about things, and trying to sort of, have a training my brain to be entrepreneurial and creative, making the most of the engagements that I have in a different sort of way with other people, but trying to come out of it as we all can, better humans, better place, a better business, more collaborative, more open-minded, more up for co-collaborations with our peers. For me, one of the most inspiring stories in the week, and my God, the news is pretty dark reading at the moment, was to see that it looks like our best hope for finding a vaccine more quickly is the collaboration between 2 of the most bloody competitors in the pharmaceutical industry, right? And we can all learn a lot from that. So look around you. Nobody is your foe. We've all got a bigger foe to fight. And to think entrepreneurially about how you drive your culture, your business, yes, your returns, profitability, revenue. Of course, that's my job and Josh's job to worry about that, as we both will be all the time right now. But to realize that we can and will come out of this better. We really will.
I think we will too. I can't thank you both enough for your time. I mean, I know I'd have a million more questions if we had more than an hour, and I'm sure you're wiped out because it's late there in London.
My pajamas are beckoning.
But I really do appreciate it. It is inspiring, and I don't think any of us have the future answer, but it is this kind of dialogue and positive thinking that I think will spur, forward motion. Ariella, we'll let you
everyone again.
She's back.
Thank you to our guest stars, or what we like to call boutique educators. It's all about keeping the conversation going. I know everyone here is so busy, and also our attendees. You're right, it is long days, but thank you for sharing your thoughts. We just have a couple of reminders. First of all, Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and our social media, as well as all of our panelists. We all want to stay engaged with you during now and in the future. Please make sure that you put our emails in your primary inbox. We produce boutique news. And of course, use these hashtags, Boutique Strong and Save Boutique Hotels. It's a way to show that you stand with boutique. And last but not least, stay home, stay safe, and stay boutique, everyone. We are so grateful that you showed up today. We will see everyone next week for the Boutique Hotels Crisis Guide to Regulations, as well as another episode of this amazing show. Thank you, everyone. Have a lovely weekend. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great
Thank
weekend.
you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.